It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.
America, 1906. It's the turn of the century. Theodore Roosevelt, 26th President of the United States, wins the Nobel Peace Prize. The Wright brothers are granted a patent for their flying machine. San Francisco is hit with what is still the most disastrous earthquake in the history of the United States. The average worker's wage is 22 cents an hour, and the life expectancy is 47 years. Baseball is the national pastime, but there is a new game on the rise: basketball. Sam Schoenfeld was born on the south side of Williamsburg, Brooklyn. His parents, Benjamin and Sarah, immigrated from Poland and owned a kosher butcher shop on DeKalb Avenue, with an apartment above the store where the family lived.
He must have come out running because Sammy was an athlete from the get-go.
Making his first appearance for Commercial High School in the second half of the 1922-23 season, after being called up from the midgets to play for the varsity team, Sam would emerge as one of the best high school basketball players in the city.
That was a clip from the movie Play It Again, Sam, a documentary film that chronicles the life and career of legendary basketball player Sam Schoenfeld. And with us now is producer-director Matt Berkowitz. Welcome to our show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Richard.
Well, Sam is a unknown basketball player to me until you sent and we had discussed this film of yours. When did you first find out about Sam?
That's interesting. I myself knew nothing about Sam. I was like you, hadn't a clue. And I saw the book, Play It Again, Sam, the Sam Schoenfeld Story, at my doctor. When I went to go see him, it was right on the table. And I started looking at it, and I said, can I read this? He goes, it's about my dad, you know. I said, really? I said, I got to read it. So I read it, and the story was amazing. Here is an amazing human being that in a very short amount of time in his life, his short life, accomplished maybe what, like 9 or 10 people couldn't accomplish in a lifetime. You know what I mean? And he did it. He did all these things, and he did it the best. He originated, was the founder of the CBOA, the Coaches Basketball Officiators Association, and he wrote the rules to basketball. So this is a man who is a serious person that really no one knew about. But then after making the film, everyone was like, you know, I know Sam Schoenfeld. And people would approach me from everywhere, and in Brooklyn, Manhattan. Oh, my dad told me all about Sam Schoenfeld. And as you can see in the film, there's millions of, from his growing up to, you know, his 12, 13 to like high school, tons of articles about him and the Brooklyn Basketeer.
Mostly during the 1930s and 40s.
1906 is when he was born.
Right.
So you figure it was much earlier than that now.
So the 20s, and 30s.
Because you're talking about before television, and this is before pro. So he was playing for Penn, and he was, you know, it was collegiate. But he also played for the Jewish team, the Y, and he was circulated. But he was an amazing player. He was known as the Brooklyn Basketeer, and he did all these things. You only have to do one thing to be initiated into the Hall of Fame, and that's either be a referee, a coach, a player. He was everything. He was a player. He was a referee. He was a founder of the coach. He was a coach and a founder of the Referees Association. So he's also the founder. He was a teacher, and he was an official, and he was also he did the, not narration, but narration on television. He did like the play-by-play. So
Announcer.
sportscasting. So if you're a sportscaster, you could be inducted. So he did all 5, or of 4 or 5 of these things, 5. So he did it all. He ran the gamut, and he, on top of that, ran a huge Camp Deerhead, which in itself could be a documentary. It is stunningly gorgeous land in French Lakes where the kids came to play basketball, and the families also stayed in the guest house. And this man did all this in a relatively short amount of time until pancreatic cancer, which is a killer, within a year and a half.
Was it 1959, 6?
I haven't watched the film, but it was in the 50s, as I know, in the
later
50s, because his son was right in medical school. He was, now he's in his almost 80, his son. So his son was in medical school as a kid when his father was dying, and he ran back on the ship, and his father couldn't even talk, and he walked into the room where his father was, and his uncle warned him and said, look, your dad lost a lot of weight. He's, because they weren't telling him anything because they didn't want to mess with his studies. He was in Switzerland, and they were here. So he walked in, and his father couldn't even talk. And he said, pointed to the watch. He had a Swiss watch.
Time's running out.
So he said, I want one of those. So, it's very, very emotional. So I just loved the idea, and here's a Jewish sports hero that no one knows about, but people do know about him. And
sure, but this is quite an undertaking of a project, right?
10 years.
That was one of my questions: is how long did it take from start until finish? And just to have an admiration for someone is a wonderful thing. But beyond admiration, you put some time, effort behind it.
Richard,
10 years worth.
I can't tell you how many times I quit the film, how many times it was impossible to figure out. I wouldn't have had it made if it wasn't for 2 friends who stepped in and said, you know what, we're going to help you. Because I had to reinvent every day, like Scorsese said, when he was doing a film, how he was getting bored with the film and he couldn't go on the set. And I felt the same way, and I didn't want to edit it, I didn't want to touch it, I didn't want to look at it. It was too much. And I had to reinvent reasons for liking the film. Reinvent it, to look at it even. And then, thank God, I had 2 bright guys step in and sort of direct my craziness and get it under control and harness my energy in the right way and let them, I had the brains to let them do their thing and run with what they do, and we knocked it out. And it was a sold-out opening at the Cinema Arts Center in Huntington, standing room only. Unfortunately, a lot of those guys in the film are no longer with us.
Yeah.
Lou Bender, who was 98, 101.
You got them at a good time.
101 he was, and he was playing 2 sets of tennis when we went to go interview him, but he didn't make it. But there was 1 or 2 people in the audience, but it was a beautiful opening, and we're hoping to maybe it's going to be showing at the Heritage Museum in Manhattan, where one person in the film also had an opening about his book about Jews in sports. So they also showed the Dustin Hoffman narrated the film about Jews in baseball. So they're going to probably show this at the Heritage Museum in Manhattan, and hopefully from there, who knows?
When did basketball first take shape? Well, I mean, we know baseball has been around since
James
the late
Naismith
1800s.
Invented basketball. What was back in the where's my Google thing? But way back. And it was like this upper-class white Protestant gay kind of looking game. But what happened was anyone who had a peach basket in the ghetto could throw it up. Anyone could get a ball.
Yeah.
And they had basketball. So it flourished in the ghettos. So like handball, stickball, basketball was a ghetto game, and that's why the Jews excelled at it. Of course, you had people... certain people who were, of course, anti-Semitic. One writer wrote the reason Paul Calico, I believe his name was Calico, and he wrote the reason the Jews excel at this game is because it's very sneaky and underhanded with passing, and he made it. It was just laughable,
really
and he
negative.
also, of course, he actually. Also wrote great articles supporting Schmeling. So this is the kind of man we're talking about, but at that time, look, they played with one black player on the team of Penn, and when they had that big game, the other opponent team, they wouldn't shake hands with the black player. That caused that's in front of like a full house, and that was a big deal.
So you don't really associate basketball with much controversy.
This was a time of
there
controversy.
is, because it was a fresh game. Also,
Absolutely.
I think maybe we'll take a break. And one of the reasons we're discussing this is because the Play It Again Sam movie, the documentary on Sam Schoenfeld, which was directed and produced by our friend Matt Berkowitz here, will be playing at the Nyack Village Theater. 2 showings. There's a 3 p.m. matinee and an 8 p.m. evening showing. So you can go online right now, nyackvillagetheater.com, get your tickets. And I think we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We're going to show you another little clip from the movie Play It Again, Sam.
Sam chose to attend the Teachers College at Columbia, turning down scholarship offers from 3 of New York's top universities. He went from being a savage to a lion.
First glimpse of the meeting with Schoenfeld is when he played at Columbia University. A great team with Gregory, Lulu Bender, and these other fellows. He came in to take the reins.
Schoenfeld's arrival at Columbia took the team in a new direction, and his leadership had sports critics stating that the Lions could take the Eastern Collegiate League championship. One critic asserted, Columbia's entire attack will soon be founded around him. He's a difficult man to stop because his style of play is unorthodox. The predictions proved accurate, although they lost the title to Penn Sam's first year. The addition of freshman Lou Bender to the team during his second year would prove to be a powerful asset to Schoenfeld's progressive style of play.
Sam helped me to score more. He got the ball into me when I needed somebody to get it in, and it prompted me to do things that I might not ordinarily have done if Sam was not there.
In his last year at Columbia, Sam would have the chance, perhaps his last, to lay claim to something he hadn't yet achieved, a championship. This opportunity came at the end of the 1930 season during a championship game against Penn at Philadelphia's iconic Palestra. A crowd of 10,000 people watched the game within the building, and thousands more throughout. America turned their dials to the first ever coast-to-coast broadcast of a basketball game, transmitted on 45 stations nationwide.
In those days, the starting 5 pretty much played the entire game. Sammy and Lou Bender were nervous. They played a poor opening quarter, and the first half was very close.
Both teams recovered from their initial nerves by the second half, and it became Columbia's game. Center George Gregory asserted himself and played what would be the best game of his career, as Schoenfeld's passing game and Bender's shooting penetrated holes in the Quaker defense. The final score was 29-26. Sam and his Columbia quintet had won the Eastern Collegiate League championship.
And we're back, and thanks for joining us again. We're sitting here with Matt Berkowitz, the producer and director of the film Play It Again, Sam, the documentary on Sam Schoenfeld by Matt Berkowitz. And Matt was just explaining during the break how basketball, has its underbelly of scandal also, as in any other sports that we've seen, all the betting that goes on. So you were saying the gambling, and it had gone through some scandals during the 50s.
I believe you showed it as one of the clips, but it's 1951. 32 players were indicted. 7 different teams were indicted, and 32 players for taking money and shaving points, etc. at CCNY, at NYU, at many colleges. And Adolph Ripp, who was a famous coach out in like some other place, like not around New York, he's like, they can't touch our kids. Our kids are gold. And meanwhile, they were already shaving points. They had no clue how.
It finally made the big time.
The mob was involved. There is a dark side to this, but the sad thing is, here are these kids who are 18, 19, in their 20s, just starting, and poor. And they have a chance to, you know what, don't lose a game, you just don't score, whatever, here's a couple $100. They were demolished. They were annihilated. They could never play again. They were shamed forever. And this did a horrible thing, and that's why the CBOA and Sam has an award, the Sam Schoenfeld Sportsmanship Award. And everything about Sam encompasses those qualities of sportsmanlike conduct and honest behavior. And that's why he headed and spearheaded the rules and the founding of the CBOA and all that. He was a man of character, a man of you just could not evade his qualities as a man who commanded the room when he walked in. I heard that he was like a Prussian Jewish general when he entered. He had that presence and the intelligence behind it, and also the ability to make things happen and help people to be their best. And that's why he was a great teacher. So that
he believed in the sport also.
And he loved
the sport of basketball, to put all of these other ethical values into it.
So there you have the dark side, and the thing is, Sam wasn't even looked at. It would have been an insult to even look at Sam, because he encompassed the light of basketball, and that's why people that stood by him all became major successes in referees, players, Lou Bender, all these guys, Dutch Garfinkel, they all became stars because of Sam and became better people. And Sam didn't just help them; he helped people. His family opened restaurants, put them through college.
Well, speaking of restaurants, I found out something about Sam, and that was he was a partner in the first Howard Johnson's in Brooklyn.
You know what? Not a lot of people know that, but he was such an entrepreneur. He was like Camp Deerhead. He was always helping people further their ideas. Also, his wife's son, who was a major laser inventor, he helped put him through college. His funeral, when he was a relatively young man when he died, but his funeral was a packed house. They had to put, it was like, you thought like a dignitary, or like the president got shot. People say that, and even all the Gentiles, all the non-Jews were wearing yarmulkes, all hundreds of them. I can imagine the scene. He was such a respected man, and even his son says, as a child I watched him, a little Philco, my dad, refereeing, and he had such authority. And he had 2 whistles. He told, when he taught, other referees, great referees who are known all over for being great referees, and you'll see in the movie, but had a referee to keep 2 whistles at all times and to how to make that call. And he was just a man of complete integrity, but more so, I would say, driven to do better in everything, and constantly driving himself and other people to do better, and that's what Sam did. I think he brought the best out of people as he pushed himself to be the best.
What's with the 2 whistles? In case one didn't work?
He carried one on his neck. He said, always carry one on your neck, and he told the famous ref who will be up there, Landon, what's the name of the ref? I forget. Manny Sokol, greatest ref. He's so famous, and he talks in the film, Manny Sokol, about how Sam said you always carry 2 whistles, one on your neck and one in your mouth at all times, so you could call that shot and to be in that game and in that moment. And he just commanded incredible respect, and that's why, it's just he became a hero to me, and I think we need more heroes that are Jews. That Jewish kids could say, "Hey, I looked up. I remember I said I made a film about a Jewish basketball player, and the guy said, "Oh, was it a 2-minute piece?" And I got angry, but because we need more Sam Schoenfelds, and there are Sam Schoenfelds hidden, and that's why we put the light on these things that his own son didn't know. It was like, wow, look what we found. It was gold. We found these rare photographs of Brooklyn and his dad was this important, and he finally got the award. We got, the award for him, and his son got the award, and it was a beautiful experience for his son.
And recognition.
Yeah, recognition finally, after being snubbed for a while. On June 8th, 1948, Schoenfeld, along with 4 other officials, formed the Collegiate Basketball Officials Association. The purpose of the CBOA was to set standards of integrity, physical condition, and overall conduct on the court. They enacted a regulation that required all new officials to pass a 5-point program to ensure their full capability to officiate. As it turns out, the formation of the CBOA could not have come a moment too soon. City College made basketball history when they won the National Invitation and the NCAA tournament titles. Their landmark achievements would soon be irrevocably tainted by the 1951 basketball scandal, when 3 of their stars, Ed Warner, Ed Roman, and Al Roth, were taken in at Penn Station on bribery charges.
There were point shaving scandals before, and there were scandals afterwards, and every once in a while there were rumors about scandals, but there's nothing quite like the 1951 basketball scandal at City College.
The CCNY kids are implicated in the betting scandal. The LIU kids are. The NYU kids are.
Adolph Rupp, who was a coach of Kentucky, said after the 51 scandal that these New York gamblers can't touch my boys.
The scandals continued to escalate, and in the following months, 32 players from 7 different teams were arrested on bribery charges for fixing 86 games from 1947 to 1950.
Players should get paid, and get paid what they deserve. So they shouldn't be able to fall for the rats that come over and offer them money.
Basketball had reached an all-time low. It seemed that no one was safe from the scandals. No one but Sam and the 36 other members of the Collegiate Basketball Officials Association. Not a single person from the CBOA was arrested or implicated in any way. In the words of Sam Schoenfeld, the coaches need to stress to their players the importance of emotional control, development of skills, and most importantly, knowing the rules of the game.
Was this the first documentary or first film project you've worked on?
No.
So you've done other film projects before.
In 49, I've been working in the industry since I'm 16. I worked on Channel 13, Frontier Boy, Sergeant Kabuki Man for Troma Films as an editor. I worked on hundreds of films on crew, editor, and documentary, narrative, and even industrial. And that's what how I learned. I learned from some great people. I went to SUNY Purchase. I went to school with Edie Falco, with Hal Hartley, with Wesley Snipes. I mean, I was in class with these people. It was amazing. Parker Posey. These were my friends, and it was great, and I was able to work with them. But the thing that happened is I graduated in '85. It was film back then. When I left and I started making films, and then I stopped for a little bit, I turned the corner and there was no film. It's all digital. Everything changed. So and then I got a job as a professor teaching at Five Towns College Film, and didn't know anything. I had to relearn everything, because it's a relatively young art form film, and
And technology marches
Yeah.
forward.
And
Quick.
yeah, and a lot of people say no, I like film, but I spoke to David Lynch. He was one of the guests at the cinema, and I said, David, do you like film, or do you like? I love the new DVD. I love the technology. I spoke to Vin Vendors. I love the technology. I love it. I love it. You know, you gotta roll with it because it's a different, easier. It's all dinosaur equipment. So it's now everyone can be a filmmaker in a
You
way.
still have to create the image that
Absolutely,
is captured.
absolutely. That's there, but I mean the ability for the regular everyman to go out and buy himself Adobe Premiere, which is used on most professional films, and to be able to get themselves a cheap camera relatively and
Or
hit
your phone-
film,
or your phone.
or your phone, which they even have film festivals for phone only.
Yeah.
I took the Werner Herzog film class. He makes you make a film on your phone. And I learned so much through that by connecting with younger people and getting their point of view. I miss film because of the tangibility and touching and cutting and that, because it's lost in a cloud and you gotta hope it's there. It's like you have to, it's, you know what
You
I
want
mean?
something
Yeah,
concrete.
I like holding the film and smelling it. I used to work at HBO and I worked on Real Sex.
What's on the project calendar for you next?
Well, as I said,
along with this one.
I'm very excited because I was going to do a regular lecture on Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin.
Right.
But I started to think, what if I played Jerry Lewis like when he did, at the age of when he did the Scorsese film with De Niro, King of Comedy.
Right.
That age, 60s, late 60s, like, you know, let me grease my hair back, and I could talk like Jerry, and basically talk like him, and tell a story, and even if I had to get in a little voice, you know, whatever, but I could tell it from his point of view through his mouth, what he said actually, you know, and I think it's really entertaining, it brings the audience in. And this is real stuff. Nothing is made up. So when I say me instead of Jerry, it changes everything. I still have visual aids or whatever, but during, you know, when Jerry had a heart attack and he waited for Dean to come, and Dean said, when he finally met him, nothing but a fucking $sign to me. I mean, to have him say that after a partnership of so long, which would crush, you know, anybody. You know, you can't really understand how that feels unless you understand what led up to that. So from the minute they met on the streets of Manhattan, when he was 18 years old, married with 2 kids in Jersey and doing a fright wig act, mouthing to opera with a fright wig, Jerry Lewis, it's called a dumb act, and he met a young Dean Martin, who was a boxer, Kid Crochet, and used to deal illegal cards, and came right over from Steubenville, young crooner.
Will they
and
still have a Dean Martin Day?
Yeah, and they met, and that's history. After they met, 10 years after,
It's vaudeville.
it's
It's a
it came from a
vaudevillian
vaudeville
story.
family.
Quite different than the Sam Schoenfeld story, who's
I couldn't
based
be more
in
happy.
integrity and honesty in the sport of basketball. Well, my producer's telling me we're running out of
Oh,
time.
wow, so much fun. It flies when you're having fun, doesn't it, Rich?
It does. It does indeed. Well, I'm glad that you took the time to spend
Thanks
with
for
us
having
here.
me. I had a
I'm
good
glad
time.
we could help promote this. For
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And we're happy to have the film here on March 11th. That is Saturday, March 11th, 3 p.m. matinee and an 8 p.m. showing of the film Played Against Sam,
Come on down.
the Sam Schoenfeld Story. You'll get a chance to meet Matt and ask him some questions and find out about a great basketball pioneer who helped create and form the world of basketball. Matt, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we'll see you again.
It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.